The laugh in the lobby, the soft chime of bells rang through the boutique, barely audible over the hush of ambient classical music echoing from hidden speakers. The kind of music that whispered elegance, exclusivity, and a very clear message. If you have to ask the price, this isn't the store for you. Chloe glanced up from her manicured nails, mildly annoyed by the sound. It was almost noon, and she had yet to close a sale. She was hoping the next customer would be a hedge fund manager, with a desperate need to compensate for something. Instead, it was a man in worn boots, a plain black t-shirt, and slightly faded jeans. His beard was unkempt, his hair a bit wild, and he looked tired, not tired in a lazy way, but tired in the way people do when they've lived 1,000 quiet storms. He stepped forward carefully, almost reverently, looking around at the rows of gleaming watches displayed like artifacts from another planet. "Can I help you?" Chloe asked, her voice carrying just the right amount of condescension to cut through the atmosphere. The man smiled, faint but warm. "Yeah, I was hoping to see the Patek Philippe Grand Complications, the one with the moon-phase dial." Chloe blinked, then blinked again. She let out a small laugh, sharp, like breaking glass. "That one's in the back. It's a limited edition, over 100 grand. Maybe you'd like to see something a bit more affordable." She gestured toward a row of tag hewers, her tone implying even that was a stretch. The man didn't react. No offense taken, no indignation. He just nodded slowly, eyes wandering across the displays like he was trying to read time itself. "I don't mind waiting," he said. A moment passed, then another. Chloe turned back to her phone. From behind the counter, a gruff voice called out, "You shouldn't treat guests like that." Chloe turned to see Jorge, the building's janitor, wheeling a mop bucket past the boutique entrance. He was in his late 60s, his back slightly stooped, but his eyes were alive with stories. Chloe rolled her eyes. "You should be mopping, not managing customer service." Jorge ignored her, stepping closer to the stranger. "You want a water?" "Sir, we've got some in the cooler out back." The man turned and nodded. "Thanks, I'd appreciate that." In the narrow hallway behind the boutique, with the mop bucket parked in the corner and the hum of the AC overhead, two men sat on a bench, one in Prada heels 20 feet away, pretending they didn't exist. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Jorge. Been working here 23 years. You?" "Keanu." There was a flicker of recognition, the name like a spark in George's memory, but he said nothing. "You know," Jorge said after a sip of water, "most people in that boutique are looking for time they already lost." Keanu looked up. "What do you mean?" "They think if they buy something that ticks loud enough, they can outrun their regrets." Keanu chuckled. It wasn't a celebrity laugh, it was the laugh of a man who knew regret intimately. Jorge shrugged. "I don't have much, but I've got my wife, and she's worth every second." Keanu tilted his head. "She's sick." Jorge nodded. "Cancer, stage 3. I'm working extra shifts to keep up with the bills. Insurance barely covers anything, but she's strong." Silence settled like dust. "I'll be back," Keanu said quietly, finishing his water and standing up. Chloe snorted from the boutique entrance. "Sure you will." The man who swept the floor of the boutique was made of glass and marble, but George's world was made of tile grout, mop water, and fluorescent light. Every morning at 5 a.m., before the city even yawned awake, he arrived to polish the world that others would later pretend was flawless. Jorge wasn't bitter about it. Not exactly. But sometimes when he saw the same people sneer at him as they passed, or worse, pretend he wasn't there at all, he'd feel something heavy in his chest. Not anger, just weariness. But that man Keanu, he looked Jorge in the eyes. 2 days earlier, a stack of hospital bills lay on the counter, all of them unpaid. Maria's latest PET scan showed improvement, but the chemo was devouring their savings like a wildfire. Jorge folded the bills carefully, tucked them into a drawer he barely opened anymore, and kissed Maria's forehead. "I'm heading in early. They've got that VIP event this week. Probably a few extra spills to clean up." Maria stirred. "Don't forget your lunch, Viejo." He didn't forget, but he left it behind anyway. He did that sometimes he couldn't bring himself to eat on days when her pain was worse. Back to the present, Keanu hadn't returned, not yet. Chloe was still smirking about the homeless guy who tried to buy a moon phase, as she joked with the assistant manager, Kyle, over iced espresso. But Jorge was thinking about something else, about the way Keanu listened, about how he didn't flinch when Jorge mentioned cancer. Most people changed the subject. They got uncomfortable, offered generic sympathy, and then scurried away. Keanu just sat with it. It had been years since Jorge had spoken to someone who didn't immediately try to fix him or ignore him. That moment had lingered like perfume in the air, and Jorge, quietly, found himself hoping the stranger would return. Later that evening, George wheeled his cart into the hallway that led to the boutique. The store had closed an hour ago. Chloe had left in a rush something about rooftop drinks and Instagram. As he passed the boutique's front window, he paused. There it was, the Patek Philippe Grand Complications, spotlighted, sitting on a velvet cushion like a holy relic, $100,000 in gold and gears. He stared at it not with desire, but with wonder. What could possibly be so important about measuring time that it cost more than a home? I once wore a watch just like that, came a voice from the shadows. Jorge turned. Keanu was standing beside him again, still in those same worn boots, hands in his pockets. Wasn't real, of course, Keanu added. Got it in Chinatown. For $30, looked convincing until it rained. Jorge chuckled. You came back. I said I would. They stood in silence for a few seconds. You didn't come back for the watch, Jorge said. Keanu shook his head. Not really. There was something solemn in his tone, like time itself had slowed around him. I used to think if I had enough money, I could stop time, keep people from leaving, keep pain away. Keanu leaned on the railing outside the boutique. Turns out, time doesn't care about your net worth. George's eyes dimmed. Tell me about it. They talked for nearly an hour. About Maria's diagnosis, about George's daughter, who had passed away in her 20s from an overdose, about Keanu's own losses, the things the tabloids never printed. His father, his best friend, his sister, two men from two different worlds, one famous, one invisible, bound together by grief, survival, and a strange kind of peace. I don't know how to save her, Jorge admitted. You don't have to, Keanu said gently. You just have to be there. That's the part people forget. Showing up. He reached into his pocket and handed Jorge something. A small card, a hospital name, a foundation, a note scribbled in pen. Tell them Keanu sent you. They'll help. Jorge looked at the card, stunned. I can't take this. You're not taking anything, Keanu said. You're just letting someone be there for you for once. The return with purpose. Morning sunlight spilled down Fifth Avenue like liquid gold, bouncing off storefront windows and the occasional out-of-town tourist's sunglasses. Inside the boutique, Chloe rehearsed her smile in the mirrored column behind the register. 1 part. I love helping people. 9 parts. Please spend your bonus before lunch. The bell chimed. Worn boots stepped over the threshold. Same. Jeans, same quiet eyes. Chloe's plastic grin cracked. Oh, you're back. Keanu nodded as if they were old friends sharing a secret. Told you I would be. Listen. She drawled, lowering her voice. The Casio section is downtown. Try. He raised a gentle hand. I'm here for the Grand Complications. A pause, and for Jorge. At the same time, she laughed, an involuntary bark that startled even herself. Sir, do you actually have the funds? Keanu patted the pocket of his jacket. A soft rustle answered. Cash, not plastic, because sometimes humility comes wrapped in something more old-fashioned than a platinum card. The private room boutique policy required serious buyers be escorted to an oak-paneled salon. Chloe punched a code, unlocked the frosted glass door, and beckoned him inside. A single spotlight waited, like a halo over the watch. Keanu didn't sit. He hovered, hands in pockets, studying every polished edge. Maybe he was counting seconds. Maybe he was counting memories. Price is $108,000, Chloe said, trying to sound bored, but secretly bracing for him to faint. I'll take it, he replied before the last syllable of thousand reached the carpet. She blinked twice. In installments, in full. He set a messenger bag on the table. Out came neat bricks of bank-wrapped hundreds, stacked with all the ceremony of Lego blocks. He finished with a little shrug. Is this enough? Chloe's knees wobbled like a newborn fawn's. Somewhere in the showroom, Kyle dropped a tray of champagne flutes. Minutes later, paperwork signed and receipt folded, Keanu cradled the watch box. The way some people hold newborns, they know they're not the important one in the room. The handoff. George had just emerged from the freight elevator, pushing his mop bucket like a knight steering a wounded horse. He saw Keanu first and smiled. Then he saw the boutique manager hustling behind, eyes blazing. PR disaster. "Hey, amigo," Keanu called. The room froze. He opened the velvet-lined box. The grand complications glowed under fluorescent light sproof. "That beauty doesn't care which bulbs shine on it. Why are you showing me that?" Jorge whispered. "Because it's yours." George's mouth opened, but words refused to assemble. "I mop floors, hermano. I can't wear something worth more than the floors. It isn't for wearing," Keanu said, pressing the box into George's trembling hands. "It's for trading into chemo sessions, second opinions nights. You can sleep instead of working double." Silence swallowed the hallway. Even the mop water seemed to pause its slosh. Chloe stepped forward, half pleading, half panicked. "Sir, that piece was mine," Keanu finished softly. "And gifts don't come with returns." George's eyes filled. "I can't." "You can," Keanu insisted, "and you will. Because time is the one thing I can't give you. But maybe this buys you more of it with Maria." The old man's shoulders shook. He set the bucket's handle, straightened, and surprising everyone, hugged Keanu with the desperate strength of someone clinging to a life raft. Phones appeared, customers filming, associates fumbling for angles. The boutique manager melted into damage control mode. But the recording that later went viral wasn't the cash or the kiss-off to snobbery. It was the whispered exchange no microphone quite caught. "Thank you for seeing me," Jorge said against Keanu's shoulder. "I see you," Keanu replied, voice breaking, "because someone once saw me." Aftermath. Within an hour, a clip titled "Keanu gives janitor $108,000 watch" hit TikToks For You pages like Caffeine at Dawn. Hashtags #timekeeper and #humanity over luxury trended worldwide. The boutique's Yelp score dropped faster than the stock market in a disaster movie. Donations for Maria's treatment began pouring into a GoFundMe stranger set up. Within minutes of the upload, Jorge, still in disbelief, tried to call Keanu, but the number on the scrap of paper rang to voicemail. "Hey, it's K, leave a message. And remember, you're breathtaking." He left 2 words, "You, too." The watch that made headlines. The internet woke up furious. By 7 a.m. New York time, #timekeeper had crawled into the global top 10 on X, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and at least 3 languages Chloe couldn't pronounce. Overnight, a 30-second shaky clip. Her clip had been remixed, subtitled, reaction video ed, and even turned into a lo-fi study beat. She was the villain in stereo. 1:07 a.m. Damage Control Store's regional VP began a 17-person group chat titled "Urgent Keanu Incident." Kyle, the assistant manager type, were famous and was instantly removed. Chloe's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. News requests, curse-lace Ms. Her best friend texting, "Girl, turn off comments, it's a bloodbath." She opened TikTok. The most watched duet froze her at the moment. She laughed at Keanu. A creator in the corner shook his head, mouthing, "Sis, why would you test John Wick's patience?" 10 million likes. Chloe slammed the phone down so hard her oat milk latte sloshed onto the duvet. 8:15 a.m. Morning show studio lights gleamed while anchors practiced earnest brows. Anchor 1. Hollywood icon Keanu Reeves buys a 6-figure watch, then gifts it to the store janitor whose wife has cancer. Anchor 2. Meanwhile, the sales associate who mocked him is facing heat online. Anchor 3. Trying for nuance. Is this a conversation about class prejudice in luxury retail? They rolled the clip. Chloe forever paused mid-eye roll became the new visual definition of judgmental. Headlines spliced her freeze frame beside George's tear-soaked smile. 3:10:30 a.m. The GoFundMe grows legs page launched by a stranger named Guitargui95 smashed its $50,000 goal before brunch service started in Soho. People donated coffee money, crypto, airline miles, handmade quilts. and one guitar signed by Eddie Van Halen. Maria's oncologist leaned over her hospital bed. Jaw slack. I don't know what happened on the internet last night, but you're now funded for 2 full treatment cycles plus travel to the Mayo Clinic. Maria pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Jorge didn't tell me it was Keanu Reeves. I didn't know it mattered, Jorge whispered, eyes red-rimmed. He was just kinder for 12:40 p.m. PR Firestorm. A glossy apology appeared on the boutique's socials. Corporate teal background, serif font. No mention of Chloe by name, but everyone knew. The comments were unforgiving. At Tony Timepiece, we don't accept copy-pasted apologies where empathy should be. At Pinkronometer, maybe pay your janitorial staff a living wage next. At Keanu Daily Fan, Mr. Reeves is busy being decent. Try it. Halfway through reading, Chloe burst into tears for the first time since grade school. They weren't public relations tears or I might get fired tears. They were oh God I forgot who I was tears. 3:05 p.m. Flashback. Isla found herself on a Queens train, phone off, clutching a paper bag with deli cookies. Whenever life fell apart, she rode the subway until memory caught up. She remembered being 9, waiting behind the department store perfume counter for her mom's shift to end. Customers hurled condescension all day, yet her mom still offered each one a genuine thank you. Chloe had sworn she'd never let anyone treat her that way. Somewhere between Queens Plaza and 75th Ave, she realized she'd become the very sneer she'd sworn to fight. 4:20 p.m. Hospital corridor. George was reading Don Quixote aloud to Maria when Chloe appeared in the doorway, clutching cookies like an awkward bouquet. Her voice cracked. I came to apologize. Jorge set the book down carefully. Maria offered the gentlest nod a chemo-weary neck could manage. I judged a book by its cover. Chloe said, cheeks streaked with mascara. I forgot that the pages matter more than the dust jacket. This place has good coffee, Maria whispered. We can talk. They did about exhaustion paychecks cannot fix, about mothers who raised them better, and about how tiny mercies can outshine luxury spotlights. Before leaving, Chloe pressed a folded note into George's hand. I resigned. If you need a ride, a soup, a playlist, call me. At the bottom, her cell, and a doodle of a smiley face wearing a tiny watch. 6:45 p.m. Keanu. Elsewhere. 3 paparazzi staked out a bookstore in Brooklyn after a tip. Keanu exited with a canvas tote labeled Support Your Local Library. They shouted questions. Why a $108,000 watch? Do you regret making the boutique look bad? He paused only once. Kindness isn't a publicity stunt, he said, almost apologetically. Then he slipped inside the waiting rideshare, leaving them with nothing but the echo. The next day, a photo surfaced. Keanu had quietly visited a children's hospice, dressed as nobody in particular. No press invited, no phones allowed inside. 8:09 p.m. Ripple montage in Tokyo. A barista cupped the coffee of an exhausted nurse and wrote on the cup sleeve. In Lagos, a high school robotics club launched #TIMEKEEPER challenge. Perform an act of kindness. Film no faces. Tag the next friend. In Sao Paulo, a watch collector auctioned his vintage Rolex, pledging the proceeds to a cancer ward. In Reykjavik, a muralist painted Jorge holding a cosmic watch, hands outstretched toward Maria. Planets orbiting the bezel. A single gift had become a metronome ticking across continents. 10:55 p.m. The boutique's empty glass Casesti store was closed, but Chloe's former co-workers assembled under chandelier light, bubble-wrapping displays. The owner decided to donate 10% of all July profits to oncology research, part altruism, part brand salvage. Kyle looked at the vacant pedestal where the grand complications had once glowed. Funny, he muttered, the case looks better empty. No one disagreed. 10 midnight, one last vibration. George's phone buzzed as he wheeled Maria to the ward's window alcove. Unknown number. He answered. Voice soft, familiar. Wanted to check on you too. Jorge smiling. She says hi and that your boots need new soles. Voice chuckles. Tell her they've walked me this far. Jorge, you turned our world upside down. Voice, nah, just gave it a little nudge. They said goodnight. Outside. The Hudson shimmered under city lights, each reflection a tiny clock face reminding them tomorrow still existed. Redemption, and the ripple the very first time Chloe set foot in the Midtown night shelter. She was greeted by the unmistakable aroma of instant coffee, floor disinfectant, and something else unexpected: hope. It wasn't fragrance counter chic, but it felt oddly familiar, like the backstage of her own conscience finally turning the house lights on. She had turned in her resignation, handwritten, no emojis, to the boutique 2 weeks earlier. The HR director blinked at her, baffled. Are you sure? We could relocate you. Chloe shook her head. I don't need relocation. I need rehabilitation. So here she was. A Friday evening, jean jacket rolled to the elbows, ready to ladle soup instead of snark. An elderly volunteer named Miss Patel sized her up the way Chloe once judged customer potential, then flashed a kind grin. The ladle goes in your right hand. The judgment you leave at the door. Chloe laughed. It felt rusty, but real. Deal 1. Journals, ladles, and hashtags at 6:30. The shelter doors opened like floodgates. A trickle of stories walked in, wearing second-hand coats. Chloe greeted each guest the way she wished she'd greeted Keanu. Eye contact, and a name repeated back. Welcome, Javier. Evening, Ms. Green. Over and over, until eye contact felt normal again. Between soup refills, she scribbled in a small moleskine. April 3rd, first shift. Every customer here tips in gratitude instead of gratuity. Humbling is cheaper than therapy. She didn't know what she'd do with the notes yet. Blog, memoir, confessional, but writing burned off the old varnish of cynicism to shifts. Later, she posted her first hashtag TIMEKEEPER challenge entry, a half-length selfie in a hairnet. Caption: turns out kindness looks better than contour. The photo exploded. Not because she was once a villain, but because villains rarely show up wearing plastic aprons at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. 2. George's new normal across town. Jorge adjusted to a schedule that felt almost luxurious. 1 job instead of 2. Hospital visits that didn't require a sprint from Subway to ward, and actual dinners eaten hot. The GoFundMe had leveled out around $370. Zero more than enough for Maria's extended chemo and a cushion to breathe. Yet Jorge struggled with survivor's guilt. Why them? Why not the man in the next room whose GoFundMe stagnated at $90? He asked Keanu on one of their now weekly phone calls. Jorge, the internet changed my life, but I see people who haven't gone viral still drowning. Keanu, kindness isn't Wi-Fi, amigo. It's Bluetooth. Close range works best. Start close. So Jorge started small. Every Wednesday, he rolled a cart of cafecito and pan dulce through the oncology ward. On his own dime. Nurses called it George's Cafe on Wheels. Patients called it a miracle. Maria called it proof you can't outgive your blessings. 3. Chloe times Jorge. The awkward alien in brisk afternoon. Chloe's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jorge, hi. The ward loved your cookies. You up for something bigger? Bigger turned out to be a supply drive. Blankets, beanies, lip balm, anything that makes infusion chairs less like dentist chairs from the underworld. Chloe recruited shelter volunteers. Jorge rallied exco workers. From housekeeping, Kyle even showed up with gift-wrapped fleece throws. He'd been demoted to stockroom duty, which apparently builds character. They set up outside the hospital lobby, a row of folding tables draped in borrowed linens. Keanu donated anonymously 12 crates of organic snacks, though anonymity faltered. When one crate bore a Sharpie doodle of a puppy saying, "Ho," everyone recognized his meme handwriting. By sunset, they'd filled the treatment rooms wall to wall with care packages. The hospital director shook George's hand, eyes glassy. Chloe caught herself tearing up beside a box of lavender socks. She wiped her face, sniffling. Tell nobody I cried in public. Jorge grinned. Too late. Your mascara is live streaming. Emotion. 4. The blog goes Boomchlo's reflections morphed into second-hand seconds. A blog titled with a wink, giving time a second chance. Her first long-form post, Confessions of a Boutique Bully, began, I sold watches that measured perfection. But I never asked what perfection costs the soul holding the credit card. Within 48 hours it hit Medium's front page, translated by readers into Spanish, Tagalog, and Icelandic. Each version punctuated by her original line, "Humility is haute couture." Brands emailed sponsorship offers. She declined them all except one from a tiny sustainable shoe startup that promised free pairs for shelter guests who landed job interviews. She said yes, on one condition: no ads featuring my face. My redemption isn't clickbait. The startup owner replied, "Best quid pro quo I've ever signed." 5. Maria's bell on May 19th. The floor gathered near room 7B. Maria, hair now a fuzzy halo, stood beneath the brass bell reserved for patients who complete chemo. She gripped the rope, looked at Jorge, at Chloe, at Keanu. Yes, he flew in incognito, baseball cap low, armed with a bouquet of wildly mismatched daisies because he liked the optimism of ugly flowers. Maria tugged. The bell rang 3 times, one for past pain, one for present strength, one for future days not yet squandered. A nurse wiped tears. Keanu wiped his nose allergies. He claimed Chloe captured nothing on her phone. She chose memory over megapixels. Afterwards, they gathered in the ward lounge with cafeteria cupcakes. Maria raised a pink icing-smeared fork like a scepter. "Everyone keeps thanking this man." She pointed at Keanu, who looked ready to hide under a hospital blanket. "But he reminded me time is a gift. You all gave me the ribbon." Keanu lifted his soda can to time, then unboxed and unreturnable. 6. Global Echoes Melbourne. A barber offered free haircuts every Tuesday for shelter residents. Mirror etched with tiny engraving. Accra, a university watchmaking club refurbished broken timepieces and shipped them to displaced families. Oslo, a commuter train posted signs reading "Your ticket today is a smile." Conductors donating their own wages to cancer research once a month. Each story tagged #TIMEKEEPER challenge, each rippling outward. Social scientists began citing it digital compassion cascade. Economists called it kindness GDP. Keanu called it proof people want permission to be decent. 7. Chloe faces the mirror again 6 months post-incident. Chloe sat in a podcast studio. The host introduced her as ex-luxury-saleswoman-turned-humanitarian-blogger. Chloe winced but rolled with it. Host, if you met the old you, what would you say? Chloe laughing softly, girl, step off the pedestal before it tips. Host, and as someone watching who's stuck in that judgment loop. Chloe, recognize your pedestal is a tombstone for growth. Jump down, there's soup to serve. The episode trended #1 on Apple Podcasts, not because Chloe had all the answers, but because she dared to broadcast her questions. 8. The rooftop finale. Almost late August dusk painted the city mauve. Chloe, Jorge, and Maria, now in remission, joined Keanu atop the shelter's roof for a modest half-birthday picnic. Maria's idea, every bonus month is worth cake. Battery-powered fairy lights cast gentle halos. Keanu strummed a battered acoustic guitar, coaxing out an off-key version of Here Comes the Sun. Jorge harmonized badly. Chloe clapped time. Maria danced in her chair, mid-song. Sirens wailed far below standard city soundtrack, but up here, time felt suspended, the skyline itself applauding. Keanu hit a minor chord and grinned. You know, everyone thinks a watch tracks minutes, but it really tracks miracles. The trick is noticing them before they tick past. Maria raised her paper cup of ginger ale to miracles on layaway. They clinked, the fairy lights flickered, as if nodding amen. The clock strikes kindness. 2 years later, the ballroom at the Metropolitan Museum gleamed like it had been polished with moonlight. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, reflecting off glass cases that displayed relics of old empire's scepters, scrolls, crowns. But tonight, the center spotlight belonged to a very different artifact, a watch. The Patek Philippe Grand Complications, sitting in a velvet case. Modest compared to the grandeur around it, yet far more powerful. An auctioneer in a tuxedo cleared his throat at the podium. Lot number 7, estimated starting bid, $100,000. But if you followed the story, he paused, smiling. You know it's worth much more. And so the bidding began. 1. The auction of the century. The auction was being live-streamed in 19 countries, dubbed in 11 languages, and had so many active viewers that the platform crashed twice before switching to backup servers. The fundraiser, titled the Timekeeper Gala, was organized by the newly launched Timekeeper Foundation, a non-profit co-founded by Jorge, Chloe, and Maria, with silent backing from Keanu. Their mission? Simple, fun time. Time for patients to heal. Time for caretakers to rest. Time for overlooked souls to be seen. And tonight, the foundation's heartbeat was ticking inside that watch. 2. Chloe's speech. Low adjusted the mic. She looked different now, less polished, more real. Her black dress was vintage thrift with a fresh hem, and her hair fell naturally, like it stopped trying to impress the internet a while ago. She took a breath. 2 years ago, I laughed at a man asking for a watch I thought he couldn't afford. Today, I help others afford time with the people they love. The room went still. I'm not here to erase my past. I'm here to say this: mistakes, when faced head-on, can become directions. Tonight's auction is not about money. It's about what happens when someone buys into empathy. A beat. And let's be honest, Keanu really gave us the best marketing campaign in history. Laughter, applause. But it's Jorge and Maria, Chloe continued, gesturing toward them in the front row, who taught me how to spend time like currency and give it away freely. 3. Jorge and Maria, center stage. George wore a navy suit donated by a tailor who watched their story unfold online. Maria wore a soft red gown and no wig. Her curls had returned, silver-streaked and radiant. I don't know why we were chosen, Jorge whispered to Maria as applause rose. Because you didn't choose bitterness, she whispered back. They held hands like newlyweds renewing vows. 4. The final bid. Do I hear 1 million? The auctioneer called, sweat beading at his brow. A paddle went up, then another. Online. A small non-profit from Ireland bid $1.1 million. A philanthropist from Mumbai upped it to $1.25 million. A young woman in a modest blazer raised her hand next. Her name Arya. No title, no entourage. $1.5 million, she said softly. The room gasped. Sold. The auctioneer shouted. Click of the gavel. Thunderous applause. Keanu, seated in the back corner behind a borrowed program and a camera-shy smile, exhaled. 5. The new timekeeper. After the auction, Arya walked over to Jorge and Maria, watch box in hand. She wasn't a celebrity or investor. She was a former oncology nurse. Her mother had died of leukemia 2 years prior. I watched your story while sitting in my car, grieving, she told them. It gave me the courage to leave the hospital system and build hospice homes that feel like homes. She looked down at the watch. I don't want to keep this. She opened the box and held it out. I want to donate it back to the foundation, to be auctioned every 2 years. Let it keep raising time. George's hand covered his mouth. Maria nodded through tears. A legacy had been born. 6. Keanu's quiet goodbye gala ended with fireworks above Central Park, timed perfectly to the ticking of a projected clock on the museum walls. But Keanu slipped out before the finale, ducking through the back in a hoodie and a pair of very tired boots. He paused at the museum steps. A reporter spotted him, breathless. Mr. Reeves, why didn't you speak tonight? The world wants to hear from you. Keanu turned, thought, then smiled. I said enough for the watch. And he disappeared into the Manhattan night like an echo, fading gently, still somehow ringing in the ears of the world. 7. Where they are now. Chloe now runs Second Hand Seconds as a full-time non-profit blog that pairs volunteers with oncology wards. She's working on a book titled What Time Bought Me. Jorge and Maria speak at hospitals around the world about patient dignity. Jorge still hands out cafecito every Wednesday. The Timekeeper watch has raised over $5 million in for cycles and counting. Keanu remains anonymous in public appearances, except for one sighting at a free dental clinic where he was reportedly helping a young boy who chipped a tooth on a skateboard he bought. Final word from a boutique laugh to a global movement. The Timekeeper is a story about what we do with the seconds we're given and who we spend them on. If you'd like me to compile all 6 parts into a complete formatted script, or create a downloadable screenplay-style version, just let me know.